I do think there was quite a spiritual part to my upbringing, but I look back and I think that it's more about a way of living. It was more spiritual rather than religious or ceremonial. So I mean, my mother was Protestant background, but she wasn't a church goer. But my grandmother was. My grandmother went to church, but I never really went to church with her, and eventually she stopped doing that as well. So, but that's not to say they weren't spiritual people. I think my grandfather was exceptionally spiritual in the way that he acted. He was very kind, giving and generous, and he was an incredibly warm man. And so was my mother as well. She was the kind of person who would make anyone who was speaking with her feel like they were the only person in the room, that they were really important, and she would give them all her attention. And my father as well, I think I got a sense of spirituality too. And his was more, I think, based on how to read the world and how to be wise about the world. Through those two, multiple mentors, my grandparents and my parents, I think I was given the wisdom and the heart, to go out into the world and engage with it. Mum was really open to talking about her place in the world and our place in the world and what our voices meant, and considering others. I guess there were very Christian values. They were very, treat your neighbour as you would like to be treated. Yeah. And they sent me to Christian schools as well, because I think they thought that would be the best place for me to get an education and to learn how to be a good human being. But we didn't really, in the end, refer to that code so much as to, rather than just think about being an honest person, and having a positive voice in this world, trying to be the most well-rounded human being that you could. It's a really interesting thing that I'm trying to unpack as well. Why is it that I am drawn to other minorities, so migrant, Aboriginal communities, and as well women? I think with women, women were always people that I were able to connect to much easier growing up. I was much more of a mummy's boy, and I've got one other sibling, which is my sister, and she was a great mentor to me growing up. And I've just always had a lot of women around me, and yeah, I mean, my dad was as well, so and even though I do think my sexuality, being gay, does, because I do have quite a strong feminine side, I think that makes it easier for me to relate to women, and it'd be even more so than I think men. So I really love focusing on that group of society, which is nice because it also interlinks with other subcultures and other community groups, and I love acknowledging that. I love honouring my mother as this amazing mentor, and she was my mother, and that was pretty much the role that she chose in life. She had other jobs to do, but she was dedicated to being a really loving, wonderful wife and a really wonderful mother. And I think that my life is great and has been easy, and I have been privileged because of my mother and also my father as well, who did everything he could to create this wonderful world and give me all of the opportunities that could be given to me. But then there's also the element that women are still a group within society that receive prejudice, and there's still a lot to fight for, and I really understand that as well. As being gay, I had to come out. I had to figure out why, what it meant, because I didn't really have any role models around me. So I really had to deconstruct my identity, and I understand the need for feminism as well, which is also a questioning of female identity and a redefining it from a woman's perspective, not from anyone else's perspective. And I understand that because that's what I had to do as well. There was a lot of other people who in society that was telling me what gay was, but I really treasure the fact that I was able to decide what that was and what that was going to mean to me, where I was going to fit into society and where I was going to fit into my family. And then I think with a migrant identity coming into this country, that is also a group of people who really have to spend time thinking about their identity. What is their place going to be in this new location? Who are they now that they are in this new space? And I can really relate to that. And then it's funny as well with the Indigenous community. Aboriginal people have lived here for 60,000 years, but colonialism has displaced them, decimated that community, and again they have been placed in a position where they have to reconsider everything about their identity and piece things back together. And so I have a great compassion for anyone who has had to do that and had to go through that. And then as much as I'm really supportive and I'm making work that refers to those groups that you mentioned, the work that I'm making using those voices are also very much about the other people, the other portions of society who have not spent any time redefining their identity. What's really interesting, because I'm in all my works, but I don't really look like I do in my works, the portraits, for the most part, are very stylized, and I will always position myself to be almost in exactly the same front-on profile with those. And then there are other images as well where I'm performing, like the image behind me, where it's called Ophelia, where I lay in a bed of flowers in the water and played dead in a very dramatic way. But yeah, so a lot of people don't really recognize me. And then recently I've had friends commenting and saying, oh, you should redo that work that you did in 2004, but now as a 34-year-old instead of a 24-year-old. And that's made me realize that, it's been over 10 years that I've been making work and using myself in my work. And I've taken on so many guises, I've forgotten that I'm actually also, as well as my gender, my cultural background, and national identity, I'm also putting my age in there. And of course, that actually, your age, it has a huge relationship to your gender, because I think the expectations in society for your gender changes. And I think for men, like men are renowned or stereotypically known for having a midlife crisis in their 40s. I happen to think gay men have it in their 30s because we generally don't have children, and so I think we have this kind of identity revolution or crisis a lot earlier. Whereas I think men who have families wait and they have it after. And I think by identity, it's about going, oh my gosh, who am I now? I quite like it. I'm happy to keep performing and getting older. My body's changed as well. I'm heavier than I was before, and so it's been really interesting taking on roles such as Santa, where I was able to capitalize on being more bearish. But then I'm also still playing female roles too, and those roles have changed too. I love embroidery because it is it's something that you have to devote yourself to, and something that you really have to be very focused on. And there is a sacrifice of time, and we all know how precious time is these days in this crazy world that runs at 1,000,000 miles an hour. There's something about hand sewing which is really, really rewarding and feels great once you finished it. It lasts longer, which is great as well. I like that, and I think people who also dedicate themselves to a similar craft will look at the work and understand it and can relate to it. The journey of going through and making an embroidery, sometimes they can look really simple. There's always the beginning stage where you're really excited and you have this design and you're like, I'm going to do that. And then you start and you go, wow, I didn't think this was going to take this long. It probably is only going to take another 2 hours. and then 2 hours go and you've only done another quarter and you think, oh, okay. So you start to doubt yourself and you start to freak out a little bit, and then you go, no, I'm going to push forward with this. So you go on a real, with every embroidery I've ever done, it's always been quite a journey, and it's been like this marathon that you know, and but then you start to get close to the end, and eventually you finish, and it's amazing because it hasn't just been a breeze. You haven't just been able to whip it together. You've had to really figure out, is this thing that I'm embroidering, is it really worth doing? So I've loved doing those individual pieces, but the collaborative works that I've been doing, the ones where I've been inviting people and working with, have been amazing because of the conversations we've had. And I'm amazed at how generous people are with their time as well, and how many people have been willing to come and spend time with me working on this object that ultimately, you know, I think in the end I become the guardian of, but I don't really think anyone actually owns it because so many people have contributed to it. And so, yeah, and I just love that it's like really the least masculine thing that you can kind of think of. But I think as a feminine craft, it says a lot about, you know, women in history in general, you know, being able to see things through and have patience, and the wisdom that, you know, that really good things take time. And I think that men have that too, but I just don't think that men have that a lot of those opportunities in culture. I mean, maybe they used to with men's crafts that would have been created, but really what I don't really know nowadays, other than men working on perhaps on their cars or on their home, do they really have that allows them to stretch that muscle of dedication. I used to think that performance was about channeling something, and I still do, but I used to think that you had to channel it through a sense of make-believe and the actual performance. And now I have a much greater understanding of performance as channeling reality. I'm often tapping into things that have happened in my own life and something about from my own experience to talk about a shared experience or something that's about the broader community. And that's how I've been able to keep it authentic, by always being able to speak from the heart. And I mean, I'm somebody that wears their heart on their shoulder. I'm a really emotional person. You know, I only do things that I really mean, and I only really want to talk about things that I really have a strong feeling about. So I haven't had to force too much. And luckily, as I grow older as well, I have more life experiences and I have more to draw from as well. And I guess it's been nice, you know, being able to speak about things like gender, things like cultural identity, things like sexual identity as well, from a very young age to, you know, a young adult age. And then eventually, I suppose, in much more mature terms. Yeah, I realise that my voice, what I have to say, is also, to an extent, only part of the story, and I'm really much more interested in what other people have to say as well. So now I'm engaging with community groups, and like I said, I'm working with other people and allowing their voices to come through in my work. And of course, the way that I've been shopping with those people is so that it gives them a place for their authentic voice. I guess it's kind of good that I've been practicing so long with my own voice, and I have a really great platform for other people